Wait, I do have one question. Oh, okay.
Actually, Evan, can you stop recording real quick to start? Okay, so thank you everybody for another episode of Mike's Movie Podcast. One of my favorite conventions of movies is when you're watching the credits, you see the scroll and it says, this movie starring, and then at the end it says with, and then it has the name of the actor, and then it says and as well. So like with and. And I'm very happy to report that we have been able to get that convention to life in this podcast. This is Mike's Movie Podcast featuring Evan with special guest Adam and special guest Sarah, who is joined today to talk about the latest feature film directed by Darren Aronofsky called The Whale, in a big comeback role for Brendan Fraser. That's the subject, and that's what we're going to dive right into. So I'm just going to go ahead and open up the floor to whoever wants to start talking first.
Well, I think, thanks, Mike, for that great introduction. And I invited our old friend, Dr. Sarah Linwick, on the show, who is a trained, University of Michigan trained doctor of philosophy with rigorous skills in critical theory and early modern Renaissance, whatever, Shakespeare shit, right? So like you're gonna give us a lens for this movie, because we thought this movie was so good and so important that we would add a little firepower to our already incredible arsenal. And I know, Sarah, I want to get to this at some point. I won't put you on the spot right now, but you did write a piece on this, an essay of some kind. Is that right? On this movie.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be on this podcast, and I find it very, I enjoy listening to it very much. I wrote about 3 sentences on this movie for Rotten Tomatoes, and I did not post them. So that, in answer to your question.
All right.
That's good, because it didn't spoil it. You can save it for here. You withhold the content for the podcast.
You wrote a tweet. By the way, so I'm a doctor too, so I'm gonna put on my glasses. So we have two doctors. There's a club, right? If you're looking at the screen, you have the PhD club. So we get to talk more and louder about the movie.
Yeah, that usually goes really well when you talk more.
It does. That's what everybody says. Well, we just got a positive review. It said I was. What did she say? That we had a listener who said I was steer. I steer the podcast. I'm the juice. I'm the rudder. You guys are kind of like the sails.
You steer it like that guy who tried to kill his family with the Tesla.
Which, by the way, Tesla, big news about Tesla, which we won't get into, but.
So Sarah, I'm curious, what were the 3 sentences that you wrote?
I can read them. I took a screenshot of them.
Okay.
Before I decided, before I deleted the review. I said, this movie is a profound examination of the conflicts and connections. Actually, that wasn't the review I liked. Just a second.
We're chomping at the bit. The anticipation is killing me.
Okay, I'm ready. This movie examines the conflicts and connections that form when people who are stuck experiencing the world in fundamentally different ways try, but struggle to care for each other. Every character is compelling, even the pizza delivery person with the smallest role is necessary and complex. Ultimately, Ellie, ultimately the character who is most disconcerting, Ellie, is the most illuminating. The Whale demonstrates the power of stepping beyond what has become second nature. That was it. I think that Ellie is the best, the most interesting character.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that all the reviews of this movie focus on Brendan Fraser, sometimes have some praise for the person who plays Ellie and some of the other actors, but mostly just missed the point. And it sounds like the critics are kind of like in an echo chamber. They're all afraid, like anybody who's kind of like high up in the world of criticism, is terrified that if they actually praise the movie, then they will seem stupid. So
They
I
are,
thought that was interesting.
Why would they seem stupid if they praise the movie?
because it's cool to pan it, and we don't care what they have to say because they don't.
I'll
even
tell you. I'll tell you why they would seem
cool
stupid.
to pan it.
I'll tell you why. It's because it is a movie that is pretty effective at eliciting emotion. And because the whole fat suit thing, it's a huge controversy. The fact that Brendan Fraser is wearing a fat suit, people feel that Darren Aronofsky is basically made a bad decision because he's taking power away from a group of people who are
actually fat,
underprivileged, underrepresented, because the camp, like in Hollywood, we often do not see people who are obese. And so if there's going to be a movie about somebody who's obese, there should be an actor who's like actually obese playing that character. And it's terrible that Darren Aronofsky did not find somebody to play that role, because instead he is just sort of letting somebody who has a lot of privilege take all the glory for playing that role. Somebody who doesn't like experience what it's actually like on a daily basis to be I guess morbidly obese. I mean, I am technically obese, so I'm sure that Brendan Fraser is technically obese as well. But perhaps not, well, he's not morbidly obese. And they believe that as a result, people are just sort of like presented with this privileged person with a fat suit, and the whole point of the movie is just to gawk at how awful and grotesque it is to be fat, which is so wrong and totally misses the point. And it's not about Brendan Fraser being fat. That's what I think.
Yeah, and I don't even know why we're giving it credence or discuss. Like, none of these people, the reviews I've read, it's like they barely watched the movie. It's almost like they're responding to other reviews, if anything, and none of them have PhDs. So it's like,
yeah.
I also want to point out before I stop talking, I'm going to stop, Mike, that it is profound how quiet and polite these two are being while you spoke, and I think that's a testament.
Well, it's almost as if we have more respect for Sarah than we do for you.
No,
you need me to say it.
How could that be?
Yeah, I need a bit of gap in my knowledge. I'm a little bit out of the loop as like what the reviews of The Whale are, because I actually haven't checked on that one.
Because we're the review. I don't need to know what other people think.
Right.
This is the first review right here.
This is it.
But this is, I mean, I do have, I mean, just a slightly different point than what you were making, Sarah, though, but like about The Whale, like this does strike me as the type of movie which is really good and really effective, but like some critics are like, oh no, it's actually bad. And like this kind of that contrarian impulse, and it's not actually a review of the movie, just people just kind of using that as an opportunity to talk about like how smart they are and how they can see things from different angles.
Yeah.
Well, isn't that what we do here? Isn't the whole
no, we don't do that here because we're genuinely geniuses.
And this is no, but this is different because we have a more holistic approach, right? And like we put the movies in the context.
It's a naturopathic review.
No, that's not what I meant by holistic. I mean more like we put it in the context of like a normal day. We're just three average Joes, you know what I mean? Trying to make a living, trying to live our lives, you know.
I think the average Joe has a PhD. If you're gonna swing your dick around about a PhD, you can't also try and be an average Joe. You got
two average Joe schmoes and one PhD wizard. That we
so as traditional as Sarah I'm sure knows this fan show, I will be withholding my thoughts until Mike and Evan expose themselves, because I feel that if I reveal mine first, it biases them. So Evan, since you've already been talking, would you like to tell us what you thought about the movie?
The movie? Yeah. Wait, what movie? I saw the movie before any of you, and I told you to go see it. I don't think anybody would have seen it if it weren't for me. And so I think I'm kind of like a guiding force when it comes to.
I'm pretty sure if we went back in the group text, I've sent a message to the group text when it was announced in Variety that Brendan Fraser was cast in it. several years ago. But yeah, go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll just share two things. So number one, to me, it's just a great movie. It seems weird to say that I liked it. It's just, this was a good movie. I thought it was a cut above, the normal piece of art that you paid $11 to go sit through. I have one anecdote that I'll share that sort of lends itself to my feelings about the movie, and that is when I normally go to the movies, I go to Alamo Drafthouse and I do my routine. I go there, I get a burger, I get a bottomless Diet Coke, and I sit and I watch the movie. And I did that at this movie, and the burger came right when the movie started. And if you watch the movie, the opening scene, it gets right into it. Like the difficulty, how difficult the movie it is to watch becomes apparent right away in the opening scenes. And I realized about 2 bites into the burger that I was not going to be able to finish this sandwich. And the emotions, and both like the fact that for me it hit kind of close to home, some of the behaviors and the details of his situation, which I'm happy to get into more later. And I just couldn't eat it. I lost my appetite entirely. So, and that never happens. I'm usually a clean plate club kind of guy. But I thought it was good. I was a little afraid.
Did you throw the burger away? What did you do with the remainder of the burger?
It just sat there, and I didn't take it home because it sat there for like 3 hours throughout the whole movie. So it was a waste. If I had been thinking more clearly, I would have known better. Like, you're going to see a guy with a binge eating disorder, you probably shouldn't eat whatever they call it. There's some funny, gross name for the burger. It's like the monster burger or something like that. Anyway. Yeah. So I didn't eat it. That's all I'll say for now.
Yeah, I'll add too for that one. I thought the movie was quite good, and I enjoyed it, and I had some emotional reactions, emotional responses. I would say it's like the type of movie where good chance I won't ever see it again. Because I mean, it's definitely not like a fun movie, but I thought it was thought it was quite effective, and I'm happy that I saw it, and I'm happy that the movie exists. One quick thought is I'm gonna have to go and review the previous podcasts. And actually, now that I'm saying this, I'm answering my question. I was going to say, because this is the second Aronofsky movie that we've done on this podcast before, and I was thinking about directors that we've reviewed multiple times, and then of course that David Lean is one that comes to mind there.
David Lean and Darren Aronofsky, the only
the two pillars. But no, I thought it was like kind of, yeah. I thought it was just kind of, yeah, I kind of enjoyed it. I guess I'd kind of like put it in the same way as like The Wrestler as well. Kind of a similar one where I enjoyed that movie, but I don't necessarily have a desire to watch it again. Is the same way I do say, Last Action Hero. So, and with that, so now I think we've had 3 opinions that have been stated. They haven't been quantified. They haven't been quantitative opinions, so they don't really count. But opinions nonetheless. Adam, the door has been opened. The red carpet has been laid out. You're getting out of the limo like Peter Gabriel in the Steam music video. It is time for you to tell us what you think.
Well, I went in knowing full well, as a Darren Aronofsky apologist, as a big fan of Darren Aronofsky, that I do not engage with him in sincere interpersonal emotional mode, because we have fundamentally different worldviews. So I knew I wasn't going to be a movie for me, but I do sincerely love and have a passion for Brendan Fraser as a performer. This is not his comeback movie. He was in The Passion Rose, or whatever the Travolta Morgan Freeman one. He was in No Sudden Move. Those are both bad movies. This is a better movie than those movies. But I've been supporting Brendan Fraser. I saw Furry Vengeance in the theaters. I love the man. But I knew this wasn't going to be a movie that I was going to really engage with. But on top of that, it actually upset me and made me angry from an ideological level. I knew it was going to be a maudlin, trite, people crying, life is fundamentally beautiful if troubled, but we should have faith in humanity movie, which I disagree with. But there was so much that made me upset. I actually was like viscerally angry, starting about maybe like half an hour in, and just got angrier the whole time. I can go into detail, but I can tell Evan's already shaking his head. But my point is, it is a well-made movie. Darren Aronofsky Darren Aronofsky is a talented filmmaker who I enjoy. I just really don't agree with him about the human experience. And I think his ideas, which he means well and is doing his best to present a worldview he thinks will help people, is actually bad for people.
Adam, can you expand on that, the worldview that you disagree with?
So in this movie, so I think he was very right. I think everything he's trying to do in this, he did better in The Wrestler, which is a movie that I still is a not for me movie because it's fundamentally just like a family drama, even though it's a very well done one. Everything in that movie is the better version of this movie in terms of like what it's about, in terms of like the human experience and coping with addiction and self-destructive behavior and things like that. What I don't like is, for starters, I think that there's the thing that triggered me initially is when his daughter comes in the movie, and I felt like his daughter was a very like reductive straw man parody of nihilism, where it's supposed to be, oh, she's so naive, she just hates everything, and like you have to teach her to love so she can live a life. And I don't think that those are mutually exclusive things. And I think the best movie of the last year, Everything Everywhere All at Once, does an admirable job of presenting nihilism in a non-reductive way, which is coherent with living a happy, fulfilling life without having to believe that, you know, life is beautiful and humans are fundamentally good, which I don't. And I think that having the precedent that believing people are good is a reason to live life is a bad precedent, because there are good people, there are bad people. If it matters whether people are fundamentally good or not to you, you're setting yourself up for a lot of difficulty in the world that I don't think is necessary. Yes, Dr. Linwick.
Please don't call me Dr. Linwick. That's what my dad was called. I just go by Sarah. Or you can call me Linwick. Actually, that's what people at my work sometimes just call me Linwick. Or no, it's not. Well, I don't know. Some people just call me Linwick.
Hey, doctor.
I was wondering why. Are you Adam? I don't know enough about Darren Aronofsky to say that the daughter Ellie was or wasn't a representation of nihilism, but I didn't see her that way. There's
more to her character than that, but when she's doing her I hate everyone, that aspect of her character I felt was supposed to be like, oh, this poor naive girl and her nihilistic views.
But I thought one of the coolest things about the movie was that it didn't necessarily, it like sort of showed that she could be nihilistic, but also that there was another side to that. So yes, she exposed the sort of like faux missionary, I mean fake, sort of fallen away missionary, to his former church and his family, as somebody who had stolen, and probably in doing so like really had the potential to humiliate him. But it didn't turn out terribly for him. And so I mean, I just thought, and Brenda, and so like her mom, for example, thought she was like a terrible person. She thought she was like a horrific daughter and was apologizing to Brendan Fraser for, or not really apologizing, but basically explaining like, I didn't want you to see Ellie because I thought she was such a horror. And I thought that you would assume that I was a terrible mother if you saw what a terrible person Ellie is. And Brendan Fraser's character Charlie was like, well, that's not how I see her at all. And so I thought the movie was just kind of like playing with, or just showing how a character, it just really depends on how you look at the character.
I absolutely agree with you, and that feeds into another level of things I found objectionable in the movie, which is when, like you're saying, at the end, Brendan Fraser's kind of cathartic revelation is that like she wasn't trying to humiliate him, she was trying to help him and save him. And that's another thing that I think is a bad precedent to set as like a good, meaningful person to save other people. And in regards to that, there's another movie we've talked about in the podcast, which I think does a better job on that topic, which is The End of the Phantom Thread, where it kind of like illuminates it as like a toxic cycle of like parasitic healing each other. And then the third thing I want to get into that I didn't like about it, is related to the daughter character, is the most objectionable part, which is a side part. It's not the focus of the movie. is Brendan Fraser referring to her as the one good thing. I want to have one. You're the one perfect thing in the world. The idea that having a child can give your life meaning is another thing I find to be
the movie's not. I didn't think the movie was trying to make that point.
Wait, yeah. I don't think the movie was like, I don't think we're supposed to see the world. I don't think we're supposed to see like the meaning of the movie through Brendan Fraser's character, Charlie. So
Right.
yes, Brendan Fraser may, think his daughter is the one good thing that he ever brought into the world, or he may experience catharsis at the end because he concludes that his daughter was trying to help. I don't remember what the missionary guy's name was, and has the power to like be considerate to him by reading her essay to him as he walks to his death. But I never felt like the movie was saying like the way that you should understand everything that's unfolding is the way that Brendan Fraser's character Charlie sees it. In fact, I think that it suggested that we shouldn't see it through Charlie's eyes.
So then what do you think the worldview the movie is presenting to us is intended to be interpreted as, if not through Brendan Fraser's character?
I think it was just showing how I think it was just showing the process that people go through when they care deeply about each other, but are stuck in their worldviews and wrong. It shows how, like, let's say you're addicted to food, or you're addicted to, being a martyr. You may truly deeply care for another person, or like insist on seeing the world in a certain way, and like try to reach out and like make the lives of the people around you better. And because you're so committed to your worldview, because you're so committed to like saving $120,000 for your daughter rather than actually like being there for her, or because you're so kind of addicted to the idea that you disgust people, which, I mean, as somebody with I also have a binge eating disorder, and I guess there's a part of me that is like addicted to and finds it thrilling to be like grotesque to other people. So I mean, Brendan Fraser's stuck in that. I think the movie is just exploring how like all these different characters, all of whom are stuck in their worldviews, what happens when they try to reach out and care for each other, and like, is it actually possible for them to make each other's lives better? And can they make each other's lives significantly better if they remain stuck in seeing the world the way that they do or not? And there is one character who does sort of like break out of her insistence on being one way, and that's Ellie. And I see what you mean, Adam. Like, I think that sort of like goes to what you were saying about like, well, she winds up being like the character who does show like goodness or whatever. But I'm not sure that the movie was saying like, oh yeah, when she decides to turn around and read her essay to her dad and says daddy, I'm not sure that was like, oh, well, let's celebrate her because she's like a good girl or whatever. I just think it was interesting that I just thought it was like, she's broken out of the way she normally is. Like, she broke that plate too, of course, for the bird that Brendan Fraser always was feeding. And it's just like, it shows what's possible when somebody like breaks through a way of being. So I just thought, yeah, I basically just thought it was exploring stuckness and what happens when people who are stuck try to still care for each other and the limits of that. That's how I saw it. But
so I guess another thing I'm curious about is another topic the movie is very interested in, which I'm not even sure what I think the movie thinks, is like whether people can really change. And I'm curious from what you're saying, what you think about that, because I don't have a hard answer of my own for that, but it's definitely something the movie's interested in.
I don't know. I mean, I don't think that there wasn't really evidence that, I mean, maybe Ellie changed at the very end, but I don't think we saw enough. We didn't see like enough of her after Brendan Fraser died to really know if she like permanently changed. I think more than anything, we saw characters not change even when they had opportunities to change, which is really interesting.
Yes.
I have one question here for the group here about the interpretation the photos, and I guess doxing, whatever you want to call it, that Ellie did for the missionary. And Sarah, I actually did pull up the IMDb because I could not remember the characters' names either. And Thomas was the name of the missionary. For that is when Ellie was taking the photos and recording the basically more or less the confession of Thomas, and then sent them to his parents and the pastor and whatnot. I mean, for me, it was actually ambiguous as to whether or not Ellie was actually trying to help him, or if that was just kind of an unintended consequence of the action that then Brendan Fraser interpreted as a good thing. So Sarah, I saw you nodding your head there, because that was kind of the interpretation that I had, and I'm wondering what the group thinks about that.
Because she went out of her way to specifically track down his family, I think that is significant evidence in favor that she was trying to help him. If she just wanted to humiliate him, would have put it on her Facebook feed where she had been clearly doing that kind of behavior repetitively. The fact that she went through the extra effort to like cyber stalk his family and specifically send it to them, I don't think that proves it, but I think that's the evidence in favor of it being. And I think Brendan Fraser says something to that effect when he's talking about it.
I disagree. I mean, she doesn't have any friends. So if she just puts it on her Facebook page, how is that going to humiliate him? Like, nobody knows who he is. Nobody is connected to him through her. They don't share a network. If she's going to succeed in humiliating him, then she actually has to expose him to the people in his life, and the people in his life. I mean, she tracked them down. So I don't know. I
So,
I mean, I feel like tracking him down is because I don't even think she has his last name. I think she had to put some effort into that. I think you could expose him to his church, and that would be humiliation without specifically tracking down his family.
Yeah, I think we need Evan. We need to bring you in here as the neutral arbiter.
That's not typically my role. This is by the way, I just had as an aside, this is very gratifying for me to hear people having this conversation, because I do disagree with most of what Adam said, but not all of it, which is the norm. So that's no surprises there. And this may be wishful thinking on my part, but when I saw this movie, it made me think of this idea that I've heard various philosophers try to articulate, which is that, the reason why art and music, movies, whatever, are so important is that they communicate things in a way that is more subtle and sophisticated than what we can ever do with language. And so I think a lot of especially the finer points that the two of you are arguing, my hope would be that they're not resolved by the movie. And I didn't see it. What was interesting to me, Sarah, you and I spoke a little bit about the movie after we both watched it on the phone. And both you and my brother seemed to be pretty confident that this was ultimately a kind of a redemption story. And I didn't see it that way, and I could be wrong. But I like your interpretation, Sarah, of it being about stuckness. Not bad or good. This is just what happens to people when they get stuck. And I didn't see, I like I said, this may be wishful thinking. I didn't interpret Charlie's situation as obviously good or bad. I didn't interpret the movie as obviously uplifting or depressing. Adam, you made the comparison to The Wrestler, which is interesting. I hadn't thought about The Wrestler. I had Requiem for a Dream on my mind, which is a tremendously upsetting movie that does not resolve itself neatly by the end of it. And I thought the same went for this. The piece of the movie that I found most confusing and most irritating was the ending, because the ending of all the scenes doesn't really jive with the perspective that I'm giving here. But I like the idea in general of having pieces like this be unresolved, unresolvable, and communicating things in a way that's more complicated than just like, this is she was a source of redemption, or he finally was able to do, whatever. Those are my basic thoughts.
Well, in terms of redemption, I think I should clarify what I meant if I said that I thought it was a redemption story. I think that Brendan So I think Charlie could have experienced redemption without the film saying that he was redeemed. So, and I think he did experience redemption, but I don't necessarily think he's redeemed, like objectively.
I agree.
Do you think he experienced it through his daughter or through another?
Yeah, but that's not good. He did, but that's not good, right? Like,
No, it's not. It's messed up. It's really
Right.
messed up that a guy is experiencing redemption as he's walking to his daughter and having a heart attack in front of her. That's so fucking messed up. Like, what kind of a parent is going to say, like, what I really want is for you to read your essay that you don't even care about while I have a heart attack in front of you. Like, that's awesome. I'm experiencing heaven. Like, that's so messed up. Of course that's not.
Yes.
So,
but he wasn't, sorry, Mike, just real quick. I just want to say, like, to his credit, Charlie isn't a villain in the movie either, right? Like, he does a lot of things that have an obviously positive impact on the characters around him. And that's what I like.
You would find a character that has an affair with a student, not the villain of the movie.
Well, and when I said it,
That's fucking gross too. It's
right.
Messed up.
Well, whatever. It happens.
I will say though, Evan, to your point though, just to jump in real quick too, in agreement here, I do not believe that at any point in the movie was Charlie acting maliciously.
Right.
So
pathologically, maybe.
Yeah.
But he also acted in the spirit of goodness and did good things. He was a good teacher. He had moments where he was a good parent, but a very sick and stuck person who is selfish, like all of us. Each of the characters is tremendously selfish, right? I mean, like that is a huge piece that comes through crystal clearly. And I don't see anything in the movie that resolves or wraps up with a bow like, well, this one became unselfish. Yes, Sadie Sink did read the thing. That is the most confusing part of the movie to me, and I like that I'm confused, right? Like I don't want to fully understand this movie. I hope that that's kind of more what the director was going for, but like Sarah, I don't like you. Adam knows infinitely more about this dude and his work, but I liked it in a way that I remember liking Requiem for a Dream,
which is my least favorite. Well, yeah, no, I think that is my least favorite of his movies.
Interesting because it's my favorite.
Bottom with it.
So Adam, we got the yin yang going as usual, which is great.
I can't even remember. What did you? Mother is my favorite of his movies.
Mother is a terrible movie. I liked Mother.
Oh, I didn't know it's officially a terrible movie.
It is objectively a terrible movie. We talked about this.
Okay.
I'm gonna have to re-listen. I'm gonna have to re-listen to the Mother podcast because I can't remember what the cheeseburger ranking for that one. I will actually agree with Adam on this one. The Mother is my favorite. The Darren Aronofsky.
It's awesome in the sense that an earnest movie is awesome in that it's just a big feast for the senses and perfect fodder for a podcast, but it's not a classically good movie. It doesn't have.
Okay, now you really got me hungry. What makes a movie a classically good movie? Let's really get into it.
It does not have the attributes of a refined piece of art.
Which are.
It's it doesn't have a kind of like coherent logic or story to it.
It has a more coherent logic than this movie.
Well, we're not gonna. I honestly don't remember much about Mother other than that we all agreed it was kind of.
I would say it's pretty chaotic, objectively less open-ended. We just finished talking about how open to interpretation the character arcs in this movie are.
If you're gonna do the spicy chicken thing and like start probing me for a detailed explanation of every comment I make, so like that is probably
if you're gonna say that, I'm saying it's my favorite. You're saying it's objectively bad. I want to know why.
Because it lacked sort of the same kinds of, it's not relatable, it wasn't entertaining, whatever you want to say. Like it's not.
You were not entertained during Mother. You were more entertained during The Whale than during Mother.
Yes, I was entertained during Mother, but because I have a taste for trash movies.
And what makes that trash? I really fundamentally, honestly don't understand.
Well, you're asking about a movie.
Question. Could I ask a question about Mother? And sorry, Mike, actually, you were talking, please.
Oh, I was no, I actually please continue. I was yeah, go ahead. I was gonna try to shoehorn a joke about time signatures into this, but
that's what I want.
Yeah, what I was going to say, so like, well, I guess the joke here is that, Evan, when you're talking about movies, you're talking about like the 4/4 time signature, and maybe not as fan of like 7/8 time.
Little jazz.
Yeah.
So I remember liking Mother, but just kind of being aware that it was not going to be recognized as one of this guy's better
Who
movies.
cares how it's recognized? I'm talking about to you.
I liked it for very different reasons than I liked The Whale. I'm not going to be able to detail every single
Just a
one.
moment ago, I said it was objectively a bad movie.
It's objectively not as good as The Whale.
In what ways?
That's like not a fair question.
I can tell you why I think Mother's better than The Whale.
So
I don't think there's any point in discussing like what's objectively better than the other.
I
Sarah,
didn't bring it up.
Sarah,
I would
what was
never make an objective claim like he likes to.
Yeah.
This is why
I know. I just think we should move. Can we move?
Yeah, Sarah, what was the?
I don't think you've seen this podcast. This is what most of it is.
But before we forget though, Sarah, what were you about to say?
I was just curious about Mother because I haven't seen it, and I was wondering. I've only seen Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, and this movie.
The characters in Mother aren't as good. It is a good movie, but it's
wait,
not.
Does
I had
that
a question
sentence
about the
even
plot.
mean? The characters weren't as good.
They're
I have a
not
question,
developed.
but
They're not as developed and entertaining.
So Sarah, your question is like, what is the plot of Mother?
No, well, my question is like, is there something so like, I guess if I were to look at, or if what seems to be a common thread from what Requiem for a Dream, Black Swan, and The Whale is the kind of like addiction. You might not be addicted to drugs, but you're addicted to some sort of mode of being. Is that, I thought,
Which is
if I recall correctly, when I was reading about Mother, is it about climate change or something?
It's
Not in any direct, overt way, no.
It's
Okay.
Much more directly and overtly a retelling of the Bible.
Oh, okay.
Is
Is there addiction? Is addiction any part of it, or people like?
Only
the thing though,
addiction to power structures, but those are bigger, badder, less interesting ideas than physical human addiction, like in The Whale.
It's not that. It's that he attempted this epic grand project that was beyond his ability to communicate it, and it just didn't come off right.
It was way more clearly communicated than whatever you're trying to say.
All right, you're passionate.
He just finished talking about how it's not clear in The Whale, and that's probably by design.
That's interesting. So people are addicted to like a power structure or way of like.
That's me giving a personal interpretation. That I don't think that would be objectively agreed upon.
Adam's going to go after this is over. He's going to go re-listen to the Mother podcast. And
Never. I would never re-listen to the podcast.
You yourself said on January 5th, 2017, that you liked Mother.
I want to get into Mother though for a second, because my interpretation of the movie is that the Javier Bardem character is kind of like a stand-in for Darren Aronofsky, and then also
which is part of it.
Wait, I didn't hear what you said.
And also God, which is part of what the movie's about.
Yeah, but basically, and then the kind of what happens is like the dynamic of Jennifer Lawrence like basically circles around Javier Bardem, and then eventually like what basically she gets like eaten, like figuratively and I guess in a sense literally like eaten alive, and then like reborn at the beginning. So I guess I think
it's not her. That's the crucial thing. It's not her at the end when it's reborn. It's a new lady.
It is good.
Yeah,
it is a good
right. And to your point, sorry for one last thing, Evan, is that for Sarah. So I guess it's kind of a stretch to say that would be about addiction, but there is kind of an element about just like ruthlessly consuming something. In this case, I guess the emotional well-being of another person, and then just like starting that cycle over and over again.
Sure.
So. Anyway, you should see Mother. Everyone should see Mother. And
I would say, for me personally, Mother #1, then Pi, the symbol Pi, then Black Swan, and then honestly, I don't really have strong opinions after that. The other ones are less for me. But Requiem for a Dream, The Fountain is the bottom. The other ones are in the middle.
I have one question though for you, Adam. Just a quick reminisce here. Do you recall the movie theater where you saw Noah?
Did we see it No, that was in LA. I could find it for you. Would you like me to look it up? I'll be right back.
Yeah, bring that back up as long as we're talking about that one for some fodder here.
I
as
just,
well.
Mother was a very different kind of project than this one here. Those are very surrealist.
What year did Noah? I can't. My phone is my video thing. I can't look it up. When did Noah come out? So I can find.
I believe that was 2015. I want to say. I can also look that up right now because I can tell you that I saw it at the SIF Uptown, which is also where I saw The Whale.
I'll find it quicker.
Well,
yeah, actually 2014.
2014.
Yes. So budget of 125 to 160 million. Box office, I would not have guessed this in a million years. 359 million. But I guess a movie about Noah would kind of have a built-in audience for that reason.
The ideal optimum movie podcast would just be three guys reciting numeric facts about each of the movies. Right.
Yes.
Can't do that.
There's
We don't.
plenty of those. That's a very popular genre of successful financially podcasting.
It's amazing how even the better ones. So I've got one I've been listening to called The Rewatchables by Bill Simmons, the sports guy. It's great. It's a great program. But they do also succumb to the temptation to start talking about running times and box office revenues, which I just think is the funniest thing in the world. Like, first of all, nobody listening to a podcast wants that information. They could easily look it up. Second, it seems to come up at times where it doesn't actually reveal anything about what they think about the movie. They're just kind of like, but they're just interested in it in the moment, so they talk about it. But you think there'd be like a handbook on things not to do on movie podcasts, and it would say, don't talk about the running time or the box office revenue.
Well, I mean, I take that as a personal criticism, and I have to disagree because I think that the runtime of the movie is just very, very important, and very interesting. This was 1 hour and 57 minutes.
It's what makes the on cinema at the cinema so funny is that they are so acutely aware of these things that they can parody them. And
yeah, but I feel like they're like talking about like box office, talking about the movie. That's like kind of the same thing where asking somebody, it's like, oh yeah, hey, so you're in Minnesota, so like, what's the weather like over there? Is it cold? Like, I feel like I feel like there are just like some conversational pieces that are just.
I don't disagree with you, but that's a conversation. Should it be recorded and shared?
Yeah.
Well, no, because people can just.
I mean, clearly this shouldn't be recorded and shared. It never stopped us.
That's my point.
I can't find my ticket.
Yeah. So maybe while you're doing that, we can do the.
I'm kind of disturbed that I can't find it.
Scenes. Sarah, what was your favorite scene in the movie? There's too much dead air. See, I cannot allow more than 2 seconds of dead air.
Well, instead of answering that question, I'm going to just say something else that I wanted to say. Thank you. Sorry for being such a bad guest. I've never been on a podcast before. But like I said, I really appreciate that you're allowing me on this. I thought it was kind of interesting that Charlie was so insistent that his students focus on the truth, or like was particularly interested in how people emotionally related to things, regardless of how good they sounded. And I thought, like, that's kind of interesting because that's kind of like what this podcast is about. It just brings you guys joy. You really don't care like what people think of it, as far as I can tell, other than the three of you and maybe like Nick and Shane and Erica. It's just something like true for you that you enjoy. So anyway, I was just thinking that.
I appreciate that. I've said to these guys before, and I'm not trying to be sentimental, but it is aside from spending time with my friends and family, I think of this as the most meaningful thing that I do over and above any other hobby or professional activity. And I'm not entirely sure why, but I think maybe what you just said gets at it. It's pure, dude. But yeah, I mean, my favorite scene, I think, was the binge, because you knew it was coming, and the anticipation of it, and it was triggered by what was it? What triggered it? It was
It's
just
triggered by the pizza delivery boy, which was really interesting because
yes.
that's another example of stuckness where like the pizza delivery boy thinks he wants to help this guy. He thinks he wants to be friends with him. And he's like going out of his way to like try to connect with him, Charlie. And then he stands around and he waits to see Charlie come out. And he realizes he can't do it because he doesn't have what it takes to actually like connect with somebody like that. And he runs away. And it's his look of disgust and fear that prompts Charlie to go off and just be like, you know what? I am disgusting. I am going to enjoy being disgusting. I am going to revel in being disgusting. I'm going to eat disgusting things and F the world. I'm gross and I like it. Or not that I like it, but he's like, I'm going to sort of like, I'm going to just sort of like saturate myself in the feeling of being disgusting to people.
Because it's empowering for him.
Yeah.
You know, he gets to take back some semblance of control over his life by.
I mean, it seems like he definitely does actually want to die, right? We all agree about that?
That's an interesting question. So I actually like written down a note to talk about that. Like, now this is a piece where I can relate. Like, I have engaged in destructive behaviors myself that you can't help but observe someone doing it and think, well, what else could it be but they want to die? At the same time, they don't want to die.
He's at a pretty extreme level. Many of us do self-destructive behaviors at what I would call like casual or amateur level. He's at a pretty advanced level.
At the same time, if he really wanted to die in the moment, he could do that in other ways. And
he wasn't a fucking pussy.
Well,
I mean, he could just keep jerking off and then he would definitely have a heart attack again.
That's true.
That's too labor intensive.
Yeah, I want to make one actually just quick observation that Evan, you're asking. This is a good talking point, but I just want to say that like a thought that crossed my mind when we were watching the movie was like I think it was the behind the music of Blues Traveler, and like John Popper was talking about like some of the I think he was like having like I don't know if he had a heart attack or whatnot, but he was having some similar issues of watching adult entertainment, and then that was like kind of a sign.
That's what inspired the play this is based on. John Popper talking about jacking off on Behind the Music.
Yeah, well, you never know. But the thing though is, I feel like in terms of like wanting to die or not wanting to die, is I think like one of my readings is just like total indifference to whether or not he actually died. Like in the same.
What's up with that binge after the guy sees him? I think that's the most poignant turning point in that debate.
Yeah, but I don't know if that would necessally be like a suicidal binge, like or like that's just like I feel like that was like that's like behavior that like first of all like that binge. I think like that was already happening habitually, which is how he got to where he was to begin with. But I feel like the binge was. Go ahead. What would you say, Evan?
It's not quite wanting to die. That's not quite right. So if you think of a heroin addict, who they're a daily user, and they go into withdrawal if they're not given what they need, and it's getting to the end of their time period where they've got to use, and they're at their wit's end, and something triggers them. This happens all the time with addicts. Some event triggers them. And they are so acutely uncomfortable and miserable that the only thing that they can do to live is to inject heroin. That's exactly what he's doing. That's what someone with that eating disorder is doing when they binge like that. They're not eating to kill themselves, and they're not eating for sustenance. They are doing something that gets them high in the moment because they're dependent. And that's the only way he knows how to live. It's back to Sarah's point about stuckness, right? Like in that kind of behavioral pattern, that's how you operate. So I think it was just like he's another, and I don't think that's good or bad. These are just like different ways of being. It's almost like he's a different species or a subspecies of human. Mm-hmm. And this is how a person with that particular disorder or pattern lives. And they don't live as.
I mean, whether good or bad, it kind of feels like a waste, right?
It's not good, or it isn't good or bad. It's neutral.
Evan, I want to jump in here too, real quick, Evan. And I feel like just one overall reading of the movie is I feel like it was non-judgmental. And like I feel like the movie wasn't saying like making any sort of evaluative judgment about the characters or whatnot. I think it was just like, you know, this is who they are and how they act. And I didn't get a feeling of any sort of evaluation being implied.
The only one I got, which I already mentioned, which is not a primary front page thing the movie's doing, I do still believe that the movie is trying to say, hey, these people all have different problems. They're all fucked up, but really, you know, if we could just connect with each other, people are fundamentally good, and that's what I disagree with.
I'm so surprised. I'm so surprised that you think you have that interpretation. I don't get a whiff of that at all.
You think the movie's like these people are bad? That's
Well,
what you
no,
think.
so
I've said it 4 times in a row in the last 5 minutes. I don't think the movie's good or bad. I think it's someone saying, here's how these types of people act. And this is something other people can relate to. And that's why it's a good movie, unlike Mother, right? These are how they act.
It has no viewpoint. You think the fact that it has no viewpoint is superior?
Couldn't disagree more. It has a viewpoint, a very strong one, which is that it is not correct. All right, stop.
I want to know.
I was mid-sentence. I was mid-sentence when you said that. The viewpoint is it's not correct to judge these things as good or bad. That is the viewpoint, I think.
Yeah.
Viewpoint is not, oh, well, people are fucked up, but they can come together and hold hands and sing Kumbaya. That is a very simplistic view of the movie.
Do you think the movie thinks it is a good thing that he reconnected with his daughter before he died?
You know,
You do not.
I think if
The
anything,
movie is just saying this is how people live.
I think it's
If you have an opinion, you're wrong.
wait, I think it's neutral, but I think what it was saying, or what I took out of it, what I will probably like actually apply to my life is, I think what it was saying is like, you may think that you have good intentions. You may think that you want good things for people. You may think that saving $120,000 for somebody is a good thing, but step back and like see why you think that, and like whether you're really just doing that for yourself and whether you're really doing that because you're stuck in your worldview. So like, for example, when I think I'm doing something really good and, you know, it's hurting me or I don't really enjoy it and it's not making other people happy, I feel like, you know, this movie sort of prompted me to step back in those moments and say like, what the heck am I doing? Like, am I just like stuck in this way of being and insisting on interacting with people in this way? And like, why?
yeah, but it's okay. I mean, you're doing the best you can. I mean, I think that's the thing, right? They're trying so hard to help each other. And it's like the things they put all this effort into aren't actually helping, but they are helping each other in ways that they don't intend, right? Like the biggest example of that is the girl perhaps inadvertently helping the boy, and the Charlie's character, it's not the money that helps the kid. You know, it's the things he says to her just by being himself. So it's not entirely good or bad. It's messy. It's not black and white, and there isn't a clear resolution. That's what I thought the point of the movie was. You shouldn't expect a clear resolution or a clear ending.
Yeah, I also thought his sort of like fixation on seeing things in a positive light was interesting. Like he had to see his daughter in a positive way, and he was like always so nice to people. And I thought there was an interesting tension between, or not tension, but there's a relationship between him being so willfully nice and chipper and like his self-destructive behavior. I thought that was just, I mean, like that was one aspect of his character that I really enjoyed and could kind of relate to.
Mm-hmm. It's like a happy suicide, you know. It's like I'm cheerfully, helpfully killing myself. I think that's a really important point. Like, is he killing himself? I think that's a hard question, right? And
he seems, I mean, obviously you would understand why someone like that wouldn't want to go to a hospital. I completely understand not wanting to go to a hospital. But even when his boyfriend's sister is trying to be like, well, if we're not going to go to hospital, how about we do this or do that? And he seems to just be like planning on that being the last week.
Right. And that's another piece too, is like, if if logic were all that we're operating here, he would act differently. And so would she. All she's doing is killing him. Like in a purely practical sense, by bringing him meatball bombers and keeping him just healthy enough to stay propped up and masturbate, she's just helping him die. Right? I mean, that's a pretty clear piece from the movie, right? And so it's
if
not,
that's what he wants to do, then she is helping him.
I think it's obviously he must do it. Mike?
Huh?
But Evan though, I think like what Liz is doing too. I think that does like fit into the broader theme of like the actions and the motivations of the characters neither being all good nor all bad. Because Liz is clearly helping him out, and she is his like primary caretaker and most reliable source of human interaction. But she's also bringing him meatball bombers and subs, which is basically feeding the problem. So
and the really interesting thing about Liz, I thought she was. Yeah, she's a super fascinating character because she's like, I think she's addicted or she's stuck in being a martyr. And she wants to be like the only one who can help him. And because she's like so insistent that she's the only one who can help him, she's like driving other people away. I mean, at one point she actually says like, I'm the only one who can help him. And she's making it so that he's stuck in his situation. He's dependent on her. And there's no way he's going to get out of that little tiny apartment that he lives in because she's basically kind of like enabling him to like sit there in that apartment so that she can feel like she's a martyr and she's like kind of like the only person who can assist him. And she needs to feel that because she couldn't help her brother. So she has to like sort of try to feel like she is helping Charlie, but she's not at all. Well, I mean, maybe she is in some ways, like you said. She isn't.
If he wants to die, she's helping him. But I think you're 100% right that her trait is the martyrdom, for sure.
There's actually one plot point that I want to make sure that I fully understand in the movie. So Charlie's lover was a former member of the New Life Church, but then he ended up killing himself
because he was.
And I can't remember. Was he ended up killing himself because of like internal struggles about his sexuality?
Well, and this disappointing his family and the church.
Yeah, because they ostracized him for being gay, basically.
Okay, that was something I just that's what I thought. I didn't fully pick up on that in the movie.
But another interesting thing about him is that he starved. He was starving himself to death. Like he would not starving himself to. I mean, I think he jump over a bridge or something, but he was like. Basically like he couldn't move because he was so emaciated. And Charlie's ex-wife said that she saw him and he was like he couldn't like do anything in a Walmart parking lot or something, and Charlie's doing the opposite of that. His sort of like reaction, like instead of just like ending his life by not taking anything in, it's like he's compensating for that or like trying to. I thought that was an interesting kind of contrast too that seemed relevant.
There's some kind of like, if I could describe the movie in one word, I would use a word like melancholy. And there's some famous quote where it's like melancholy is like melancholy is like a way to describe the positive feeling or the enjoyable feeling, the enjoying negative emotions, right? Like the enjoying of like a dark, beautiful thing. And there's a lot of like what in this movie, like it seems like this like beautiful sickness. Like these people, because of their sicknesses and their deaths, beautiful things happen as a result of, and maybe that's where I can sympathize a little bit with Adam's point. That there's a sort of sense in which, like, I think you described it, Adam, as like, well, everybody's all fucked up, but there's still human goodness. I don't know if I would call it goodness, but there's beauty in it. Like
worth. How about worth?
Okay, yeah.
Well, I would say in the era where Sarah is an expert in literature, there was a term for that kind of thing. It was called a tragedy. It goes back a pretty long way. But in these days, one common pejorative, derisive term that is put towards this movie because it fits in an overarching theme of a modern type of tragedy is what's known as misery porn, which where the crawdads sing is one, and that other one about the redneck family. Usually movies that kind of portray lower class people struggling with some kind of addiction or family abuse cycle in a tragic way, where we, the audience, are supposed to be like, wow,
But here's
look
the
at those
thing.
hardships. Like, and it makes
guess-
you value your own life through
Yeah,
that.
and you don't like that. Why exactly?
I, at a most basic level, find it a waste. And this is not specific to the whale. This is an answer to your question more broadly. I specifically don't like any artistic representation that is a loosely realistic, naturalistic reflection of how the world really is. Because I live in the world, I do agree that it is full of tragedy and horrible things, which is exactly why it is a waste of my time to pay money to have someone show that to me. I know that. I live in the world. I see people. I have no people that have these problems. I don't need someone to dramatize these problems for me. The whale is a little more stylized and elevated than the worst case scenario of that, because Darren Aronofsky is a more, that kind of guy. But in general, that's the answer. You want to come talk to me about the whale? Okay.
That's a lot.
I'm going to get Izzy to say something about the whale. She's going to
I want to interject a quick non sequitur here, Adam. Like on your screen, like there is a reflection that is coming through on your screen, and it's like basically like a crescent, where it's like into great detail about whales and categorizing whales and describing whales. And I did not consider that it was a distraction from the rest of the story, which had an element of sadness to it. Is that like an actual like interpretation that like I just missed all this time? I mean, I feel like it'd be remiss if we didn't discuss that point.
He's asking you, Sarah.
I've never read the book. I have no idea.
Well, one thing that's interesting, so those passages that are about just like technical things, I don't know whether they're a distraction from the story. I mean, I'm not sure. I didn't study Melville. But I will say that some of those passages are plagiarized, which is kind of interesting. So like he didn't even write them himself.
So
I don't know
I have a
kind of
follow-up.
interesting. Like why would he want to plagiarize material, or like why would he want to put that in if he wasn't even writing it to distract himself from this? I don't know.
So what I didn't know until recently, I was listening to a lecture by Michael Sugrue, who is my current favorite YouTuber. I don't know if any of you have heard of him, but he did the Great Courses lectures on philosophy in the 80s, and they became viral in the last couple of years, and somebody tracked this guy down. He has no other web presence other than these 1989 like Great Courses lectures on Plato. And somebody tracked him down and said, hey, these are amazing YouTube lectures, Like, he's like, well, what the hell is that? And it turns out he's like a 65-year-old guy dying of cancer, and his daughter has helped him make these new lectures. And he gave this great lecture on Don Quixote, which is a gigantic book. And one of the points he makes is that like, this is probably the most important book next to the Bible that's in print. And the reason why it's so long is not because it contains all this really important stuff for the narrative or the stories, but because in those days, the book was the movie theater, right? Like, or if it was either a play or a book, that was entertainment. And so like at inns and lodges where people would stay, the innkeepers would read from a book like Don Quixote. Of course, this is hundreds of years before Moby Dick, so I'm not sure it applies. That's why I'm asking. And it had to be long because they needed a new chapter for like every single night or something like that. And then there's the whole like serial publishing thing. But that's what, Sarah, I thought you might be able to weigh in on. Because I know that Dostoevsky published a lot of his big books serially.
I'm sorry. I don't know. I mean, I could quickly I could do a Google search and say something, but I'm not gonna.
That is another tried and true tradition of the podcast, is hearing something on the internet.
All right. But I'm glad you brought it up, Mike, the Moby Dick piece of the book. So like, I don't have much to say about it, other than like, I'm dying to hear somebody connect the dots between, the thematic parallels.
Well, it's almost like the criticism of a work of art is more significant than the work of art, which someday someone will have them recite this podcast to them as like a way to invigorate their experience with the world.
Exactly.
I do. Well, we're gonna have to re-listen to our Moby Dick podcast.
One of
because-
my, that would be when I don't know if it was recorded or not, but when I was pushing Sarah to pick a favorite episode, the Moby Dick one of ours would be one of my top picks for sure.
It was
Top
fun.
5, 100%, top 3 possibly.
Do you guys have like, so I have some feature with Microsoft where every day they send me a sample of photos from my library, and they say, hey, here's a reminder of what you did on this day 5 years ago. And the photos that came up for today were of things that they were the day of the Moby Dick podcast or close to it. Yeah, well, it was close to it because it was pictures I took of the Moby Dick box and like whatever I was drinking. I used to just take pictures. So anyway, there is a whole a sort of cosmic current to what we're doing right now.
Well, I do think Moby Dick, the story is super, like, there are interesting parallels.
Well,
obviously Ahab is stuck in his worldview.
Right.
He's stuck, obsessed with a whale, and it leads to total destruction. Every character in the movie is kind of like fixated on one end, and
yes. And what
doesn't get anywhere, or sort of doesn't get where they want to get.
The big question I have related to that: what is the whale in the movie? What is the whale? I mean, I have a theory.
Well, so
I don't think it's supposed to be 1-to-1 like that, because if it is, I have no idea.
Okay, let me rephrase the question. Why is the movie called The Whale?
Yeah. Well, so I will say, just to be entirely blunt and candid here, The Whale is that when the thought process I had was that, like, because it's about a character who is morbidly obese. Okay. That's like
sure that it's a factor. Like, there's no way that's not part of it.
Right. Because
that's one interpretation, that it's just referring to the whale of a man in the movie. I think the essay that the kid wrote gets at the point of one of the points of Moby Dick, which is that this guy is agonizing in vengeance toward a perfectly neutral, natural process of nature, right? The whale represents nature, and it gets back to my point about it not being good or bad. These afflictions that each character encounters are like the whale. They are processes of nature, and we are creatures who deal with our emotions in various ways that lead us to some kind of pathological behavior pattern. And we think of these things as like somehow bad, but they're just natural, right? Like, so that's what I think of this. Okay, this guy is enormous. He's eating, 3 pizzas a day. And our culture teaches us to look at that with revulsion, if not concern, right? And I like the idea that it's not necessarily that, it's just the whale. It's like looking at a whale as something that you should take vengeance upon, right? Anyway, that might be a little far.
I mean, the way she says in her essay is that the whale is to distract from the mundanity of their own life. So in that way, you're right, that whatever their obsession or their fixation is a way to simplify their life with one repetitive thing rather than grapple with what other bigger things they're dealing with. And actually, I hadn't thought of that until you were saying that, but I think that makes the most sense to me.
Well, that's not what I meant, but that actually sounds.
I know it's not what you meant.
But I feel like that's kind of like what I would say. I think the whale is each character, like what each character is fixated on, what each character fixates on to not deal with other things that are uncomfortable. It's a lot like a conspiracy theory in some ways. Like, people fixate on a conspiracy because if they can understand the world in terms of a conspiracy, then suddenly all these terrible things, or all these confusing things, fall into place, and they're all part of this grand plan. And it's a relief because you don't have to deal with chaos. You're not in the middle of like a bunch of systems that aren't really like, you're in one system that's like bad and you're fighting against it, as opposed to like dealing with a lot of messiness. Similarly, like, the characters in The Whale each have their own kind of like, well, not, I don't know, the Charlie I would say like Charlie's whale is his fixation on not taking from other people and like only give it and like providing his daughter with $120,000 and not, you know, not doing anything to sort of like take away from that money. Just ensuring that he's as contained and sort of not well, yeah, as contained as possible and as not is consuming as little as possible, which I know is ironic, but that's his whale. It's just like leaving $120,000 for his daughter. And the whale for Liz is being the sole person who can save Charlie, which she doesn't do, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll stop there.
I think you got
Yeah,
guys corrected my theory that sounds smart to me. Mike, what do you think?
I like how when I said it, you were like, "That's not what I meant," and then Sarah was like, "I agree with that." And
Well,
you were like,
let me finish.
right.
I said I was gonna say it's not what I meant, but I like that better. Adam and I have this adversarial, like our adversarial energy is so like out of control sometimes. Like we run over ourselves.
But wait, I think Evan, you're right too. I think the whale, I think you're right about I think you're all right that there are different types of the whale means many different things. You could see the whale as Charlie himself. I think that's sort of like one of the tricks of the movie is like it's saying like, you know, it's tricking you into thinking that Charlie is the whale, but there are different whales. There are many different whales, and each character has their own whale. But also, like you said, Evan, like maybe the whale is just like it's just a thing that is, and like having a binge eating disorder is a thing that is. Like you know, they're just these things that are, and they're just. I mean, you don't have to say they're good or bad. They're just there.
Yes, but I ultimately agree with what Adam and you said after, which was basically like when I think about what's Moby Dick about, it's about obsession. You know, he's got this fixation, this sacred cow that is his entire raison d'etre, and that's each character has
I want to add one more thought on this too, and this is not fully formed yet, but Charlie is an English professor, and I guess when you again, I'm just going to go for it here to not a very interesting idea, but I'm going to go for it anyway. English professor. When you think about like books, if you're to ask anybody off the street like name a book, the first book they're probably going to mention is like Moby Dick, and I feel like there's got to be. But you know what I'm saying? That's like, but I feel like when like because I know the whale started as a play, but like I feel like when you're like creating a play, when you're creating a story, and like, okay, well, this person's going to be an English professor. I feel like that is kind of I guess maybe the initial framework of the overall ideal. Because I guess where I'm coming with this is I agree with what everyone's saying about like why it's called the whale and like why it exists. I guess where I'm coming from is the idea of like at the very inception of the idea, where did it come from? And I don't even know if I'm making sense. That we can edit this.
You are. I think that's a good point. Like that is a great point. It's a good reason for the movie to be called The Whale, because it's a piece of literature that Charlie would obviously like know about and teach. And so I think that's what you're saying, right? Like
that's the idea.
Yeah, I think that's a great point.
Seminal work of literature for an English. Yeah, definitely. It's just like an artifact of the profession, right, Mike? Like, yeah. Sarah, forgive me if this makes you uncomfortable, but I gotta ask. Didn't you tell me once you had a significant other who I don't remember his name, but he loved this book. He loved Moby Dick and would read it and cry. Is that true? Did I make this up?
Yeah.
I don't know about the crying part.
I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, early on, this was like 2010 or something, 2010, maybe 9. And you were like telling me about your annoying significant other because he would like read Moby Dick in the car while you were driving and weep because he thought it was so beautiful. And I thought about that.
And that's what made Evan and Mike want to read it those years later.
Well, it did make me want to read it. And Mike, I also thank you for being nice and generous by not telling the obviously funniest part of the story of Mike and Evan reading Moby Dick, because it took
We've told it on the podcast multiple other times.
He didn't want to embarrass me in front of Sarah. Like, Sarah, guess how long it took me to read Moby Dick?
I mean, it doesn't really matter. Who cares? Maybe like 3 years.
So you're in the ballpark.
Yeah.
It took an
Yeah,
embarrassing.
I think though, Evan, like for the story there, I think like it's like a I mean, I think that what makes the story amusing there is like the difference in approach is that for me, for Moby Dick, I was like every Saturday and Sunday, I was, going to the Cafe Ladro there on Queen Anne Avenue and Roy Street and buying my $5 latte and focusing on it for 45 minutes to an hour, which is about as much as I could actually read before I stopped doing it. So there was a bit of a deviation in diligence. But to Sarah's point, I mean, Evan, you finished reading it, and I mean that really is all that matters, because it's not. I mean, it's that like Moby Dick is like the epitome of a book where you're like, I'm going to read this, and then like you open it up, read a few pages, and you're just like, I'll put it off later. I'll put it off later. It's not like a Jack Reacher book which you can just crank through in an afternoon.
Well, I gotta admit, that's why I asked the question about your friend who cried, Sarah. It's like, I've read long books, longer than Moby Dick, rather quickly. This one bored the shit out of me. Like, Moby Dick is fucking boring. Just period. Am I the only one who thinks that?
I never even read it because I could tell.
I would say
no.
I would say go ahead, Sarah.
I mean, it is boring, but I've only read it once, and honestly, when I read it, I was 16 or 17. So it's been a long time since I've read it, and you're making me want to read it again. But I do remember like all those technical chapters where it's just like blah blah blah. This is like what you need to know about a whale skeleton. I was like, this probably has some metaphorical significance, but I'm 17, I'm 16, and I don't know what it is. Anyway, so now I want to know what it is. So it was boring to me at the time. I'm not sure if I would say that again, but probably.
Listen, if I'm going to make time, you gotta grab my attention. See, this is, I don't have time. I'm a professor. This is my shirt. I went out and bought this for myself.
So I have a question about. I guess one more question that I have about the movie, and there's a detail, and the question about this detail is if anybody thinks that there's any significance of this at all. Okay, so the play was written. Just looked it up. The play was written in 2012. The movie was released in 2022. One thing that you saw on the background of that is that they were showing results of the GOP presidential primary. I looked it up. The date of the Idaho Republican primary was March 8th, 2016.
Nice.
And so why was there any significance for that one? Like, was this movie actually filmed in 2016 and just happened to be at the time? But the fact that was like so noticeable, like that year, that time. I mean, was that just like kind of a random thing that was put in there, or was there some other significance that I'm just missing about that?
I wondered the same thing. That was going to be my last thing I wanted to talk about, because I have no fucking clue. I was stretching to come up with something. Because, it was definitely filmed in the past 2 years. It wasn't filmed back then. So it's a deliberate choice. And whatever it is, it was over my head.
Yeah, I don't know either.
But it was notable. Yeah, you don't really see any other time and place, cultural background stuff besides that. The only other thing you see on the TV is the hilarious gay porn, which is two men with their shirts off. No nudity.
Yeah. I was actually kind of disappointed in that for Darren Aronofsky, the famous. I want to know who was it him or some other person on the director's squad or whatever? Because one of the most traumatic movie scenes ever, and Pi was very traumatic to watch, but Requiem for a Dream, the whole ass to ass scene is brutal. That's a terrible scene. And so you have that, and then you're like, okay, what's porn to this director, right? And it's like Cinemax, Showtime, hotel porn. I was expecting something much raunchier, but
yeah, it was very funny. I can only assume they were like, well, besides that, this doesn't really, because I don't know, is it PG-13? Is it R?
Could be.
Would it be keeping it out of an R to not have a graphic sex in
Maybe.
it?
Yeah, so maybe it's
That was my only theory.
Mike's squinting.
So it is rated R.
So then I really don't know what the fuck. They definitely could get away with way more than that if it's already rated
only
R.
rated R because of all the swear words the girl says.
Oh, that potty mouth.
She does have a mouth.
The line that made me laugh the most in the whole movie is when he's first showing her Facebook page and there's the dead dog, and he's like, a dead dog. Come on.
I loved it. I loved all the dialogue between him, and I just thought his dialogue was great.
So I have just a final random note that I have here is earlier in the podcast there was a reference to the movie Phantom Thread.
Yes.
And I can't think of Phantom Thread without thinking of an impression that Nick did about the Daniel Day-Lewis character, like when they're around the breakfast table in the morning and he's like working on his design and his wife is like eating toast and like is making some crunching noise, and like Nick had an impression of that where, so it's like my impression of Nick's impression where it's like, oh, I'm trying to make designs and I can't focus. And there's really nothing to the story other than Nick's impression of Daniel Day-Lewis in that scene always cracked me up.
Yeah, but I want to say,
and I hope we can get it. My birthday is coming up in July, Christmas is only a year away, so a recording of that would be all that I would want.
well, like most funny things that Nick has done in his life, that was stolen from me, because I actually I started the whole thing of doing impressions of Daniel Day-Lewis in that movie during a summer vacation, and he just ripped it right off of me. So whatever he did, you should.
Well, let's see it. Bust it out.
I'm not going to do it on the spot. Forget it. I haven't seen the movie.
Oh,
But I wrote down Phantom Thread. I agree with Adam's comparison, because I thought that was a similar technique at the end where it's not really fully like resolved. It's just kind of this continuing loop of pathological shit going on. I think there's something like that in this movie too. Although it is more uplifting. It's funnier. This movie's funny. We haven't really talked about that. There are like lots of jokes.
You think The Whale is funnier than Phantom Thread?
Well, they're both funny. They're both funny. I think The Whale, the jokes.
I think they're both deliberately funny, and that is one of the aspects of both of them I enjoy the most.
Sure. I thought The Whale was a little funnier. Like I laughed several times during the movie. Even though I couldn't eat my burger. I still feel bad about wasting that thing because they're like $17 now. Inflation is killer.
We were getting dirty looks laughing at the movie in the theater. There were maybe 5 other people at our theater who were all old people, some of whom were crying at points in the movie, which again is appropriate. The movie's just seeking that reaction, but there's also parts that you're supposed to think are funny.
Yeah.
And I think specifically, Izzy and I both were driven to laugh at the scene where he's putting the ranch or the mayonnaise on the pizza during the binge, which, open-ended how deliberate whether that's supposed to be deliberately funny or not. But I mean, I would say that's a fine time to laugh at the movie.
That's the kind of thing. So that's the kind of thing that was a very Requiem for a Dream type scene for me, because if you're experienced with binge eating, that is the kind of shit that we do. Like I have done that kind of thing, and it's like it's not funny. It's like, how can I get the most intense rush and have the most fat and flavor in my mouth and stomach at the same time? That's what that is. I mean, again, I'll tell you, that's a technical scene. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I would say, as somebody who also like has dealt with or deals with binge eating, like it may not be funny in the moment, but I think that every time I go back and reflect on experiences like that, I do laugh. Like I'm like
and it's all funny.
And it's kind of nice to be able to laugh at it.
Over the top, if it's someone like jacking off really fervently, even if it's supposed to be a harrowing scene, it's always kind of funny watching someone jack off to some degree.
Well, the music that's played during that whole binge scene makes it hard to kind of go into goofy laugh mode. But I definitely agree with you both. All of it is funny to me. Like, that's the thing. It's all just part of the game, It's like, it's all funny and awkward and ironic, all this shit. And that's how life is. And I want to talk, Adam, with you more offline at some point, or maybe on the next podcast, about like your primary beef with the Aronofsky thing. You don't like movies that show grim, gritty, realistic portrayals of human
It
problems.
doesn't have to be grim. That often is the case when movies are attempting to be a facsimile of reality, but it's not the grimness that bothers me.
So is it like, is the implication then that you think movies are better as a device for something that is beyond reality, something that's...
Yeah, it's like, I live in reality. Why am I seeking to have a replica of it?
Yeah, that's
fed
interesting.
back?
Because some people would say the opposite. Some people probably...
Absolutely, and they're completely right for themselves, and I don't deny them their enjoyment of things like that. I think that's more common, and that makes sense. I think part of it is watching too many movies. If you don't watch that many movies, it is comforting and nice to relate to what you're seeing and think and have it be directly relatable and whatever. But if you watch, too many movies, you're like, well, come on, you got to give me something else. I need a little more than, just normal life if I'm going to like keep watching this many movies. If you're the whale is watching movies, you're gonna that's me squirting the ranch on the pizza is like, you gotta have some fucking psycho shit in there, I'm not gonna watch it.
Right, so there wasn't enough ranch on the pizza for Adam, but
there's a little. I mean, Darren Aronofsky can't help himself. He's an over-the-top guy. He's always got a little bit on there. He's never going to be totally dry, which is why, even though I kind of think he's a little bit of, I think he's I don't really agree with him a lot of things. I think he like is doing things that aren't for me. I can't help but go see every one of his movies, even if I'm not like, I love him. He's done movies I like, and I'm going to keep going to see what he does, even though it's not always my favorite.
Sarah has been a trooper for 2 hours. I know,
So I think it's time for us to quantify everything that we've seen. So we have for the Mike's Movie Podcast, we have the cheeseburger rating system here. And as is tradition, we always start, Adam, what is your quantitative ranking of the movie?
I'm going to take this time to instead talk about that. I am extremely disturbed. Another one of my psychotic habits is keeping my ticket stubs, and I do not have my ticket stub for Noah. I saw it in the theater. That's going to bother me for a long time because I don't remember where I saw it, which is why I wanted to check. And that's why I do this. This is a check and balance on my own early onset dementia, and I'm failing the test right now, publicly, in a public forum, in front of all of my friends.
Yeah. So we're going to have to see. I bet, Adam, I bet somewhere in the country at some point there will be a theatrical showing of Noah again.
But I don't care. I know I saw it, and I can't prove it, and I remember what the theater was like, but I don't remember what theater I was at. I can see it, but I don't know which one it was. Where did you say you saw it again? I know you said before, but
I know I was SIP Uptown is where I saw Noah.
Because we didn't go together. I think as I look.
No, we did not. I do remember, because I remember seeing that one alone, and I do remember, a couple weeks later, we were hanging out and we were comparing notes about Noah, and like one thing that we were talking about is like, yeah, we really thought that he was going to kill the baby at the end of it.
That was what I wanted to say about Darren Aronofsky. I had blue balls from him not killing that baby in Noah, which gets paid off in Mother because they killed the hell out of that baby. And I was like, finally, he killed the baby he didn't kill in Noah. It's one of the reasons that Mother was such a triumphant, cathartic thing for me. He finally killed that baby.
So Adam gives it 4 cheeseburgers. I already told you my rating, Mike. 4 cheeseburgers with ranch. And that was a teaser for Mike. The ranch was a teaser to build intrigue so that he would go see it.
Yeah, I want to say with the Evan, this is actually the second time that you've done a good job with the teaser rankings, because for Crimes of the Future, I asked like, what was your ranking, and I think that you gave that like 4 synthetic cheeseburgers. So you do a very good job of putting that one in there. So, but yeah, no, I'm going to give this one 4 cheeseburgers as well. And I thought they did that. And Sarah, I'll wrap it up for any quantitative ranking that you want. And it is a 4 cheese. We talk about this every time. It's not, is it 4 or 5? It is a 4 cheeseburger scale.
4?
4.
Yeah.
Also 4, yeah. So you heard it here first. Unanimous.
Yeah. There we go. Well, thank you. I hope everybody enjoyed listening to this discussion about The Whale. Next up on the list, we have Tar. Or is it?
Have you seen that one, Sarah?
It's Tar.
Tar.
No, it's Tar.
Okay.
Yeah. On the list. So, but yes, so stay tuned.
Have either of you watched it yet? I do want to know if I couldn't tell. Did you shake your head yes or no, Sarah? Have you seen that movie, Tar?
Oh no, I haven't seen it. I don't even know what it's about.
It's about
It's my favorite movie of the last year.
feminist movie about a deranged composer trying to be.
Don't listen to him. Don't listen to him. Have you actually watched it yet?
No, because okay, honestly, Adam, I had checked Amazon. I had checked everything, and you could get it for
Are we going to do the thing where we read the group text?
no.
Because they don't know what you're talking about.
It has only recently become available on Amazon to rent, as you pointed out. But 3 days earlier, I had checked, and that was not available to rent. It was only available on YouTube for $19.99 at that time. So now it's available for $6.99, which is not great, but doable. So I'm not paying $20.
I paid $15 to see it in the theater, and then I was so excited. I paid the $20 to rent it as soon as it was on streaming. And whenever we're going to do it, I will pay another whatever to watch it a third time to be fresh whenever we do the podcast. That's how enthusiastic I am about it.
Fucking A. All right. Well, that does make
it like a $30. I should have just bought it. If I could have bought it, I could have saved myself money.
Yeah, and well, the thing is too is like that Tar is a 2 hour and 37-minute movie, so it's a commitment to be watching it so many times.
yeah, it's gross $27.4 million, and $7 million went to Kate Blanchett, which is the second highest she's been paid for a movie that is not a comedy.
Okay, listen, I just need to defend Bill Simmons and the rewatchables when you're talking about the box office, because they're taking a broader perspective on what was the cultural impact of the movie.
Oh, that's true. I like the show. I like that show.
I don't know anything about that show, but in my social media world, I only see clips of that guy that make him seem like an absolute idiot, which I'm sure are excerpted to make him look bad. But in film nerd world, the idea that he talks about movies is brought up as if he's like a dunce. I don't even know who he is. I didn't know the name of the podcast. I just see people be like, check out Bill here. And it's him being like, I don't know.
That's fair. And I think he himself probably wouldn't disagree. But to his credit, I mean, he's a sports journalist. But to his credit, he does bring on other people to the show that have differing perspectives that I think I just like it because they do movies that I would want to talk about and revisit. Like they did Cliffhanger a couple weeks ago. It was awesome. Talking all about Ricochet and what's that Henry movie with Michael Rooker. Anyway,
they talked about Ricochet on the Bill Simmons podcast?
Yes, because it's not just him. He has these other people who know stuff about like Ricochet and Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer.
Well, I will watch whatever one they talk about Ricochet. I love to hear anyone's thoughts on Ricochet.
Go listen to the Cliffhanger rewatchables. I think you would.
And I think
in that one. I got it.
Yeah.
And one other thing I'll say about the rewatchables too, which is why I like it, is that people are they're talking about movies that they like in a very positive way. So it's it's very pure. Like we enjoy this movie, we enjoy these actors. Let's talk about it. So. Yeah, I mean, we're probably not going to get into the depth of what was the budget for the special assistants, the key grip and whatnot, the real deep quantitative stuff. But okay, well, anyway, on that note, I do want to thank everybody for watching the show. Sarah, thank you for coming on. Hope that you come back on another podcast.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really fun to talk about this movie with you. I really enjoyed hearing about your perspectives and just. I don't know. Definitely made me think about the movie in a different way. Thank you.
Thanks. I set all this up. So
well, there we go. So anyway, I'm going to start time for the music.